Look who's joining us. It's Tommy P, everybody. Hey. Tom Pelissero. Thanks for sitting in the chair, Tom. Oh, I don't hear him. Do you hear him?
Tom, we can't hear you, dog.
Uh-oh. Are you muted? Are you muted, Tom? Have you muted yourself? Oh, no. Uh-oh. All right, let's put him back on hold there. This would, as we say in the business, really stink.
Well, mainly he just can't say hi to us.
Huh?
Yeah. Did you do that on purpose, Rich, so he couldn't
you know what I mean?
welcome us? You know, because he loves to do that.
Okay. I don't know. I mean,
it's not like we don't do this every week.
Being worked on right here. So, I can see off camera. He's like, I'm here. You're there.
You're there.
All right, you there, Tom? Can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Hey.
Tommy, what's up, man?
Thanks for doing the show last week, pal. Appreciate it.
That's my boys in studio. Sorry.
What up, Tom?
Minor technical difficulties here. You know, I'm trying to avoid the echo for you, Rich. That's why I had the headphones in.
Don't worry about it. We can hear you. So let's start with this one. What was yesterday about, Tom? What was that about on McAfee's show with Rodgers?
What's funny, Rich, is you just phrased that question to me the same way, almost identically, that I phrased the question to Aaron, I believe it was 4 years ago when he came back to Green Bay, and there had been the back and forth the entire offseason. I said, what was this all about to you? And he said that was a loaded question and then talked for about 20 minutes about it. With Aaron, I think I was struck by this. Obviously, he has a long history with Pat, and he's used that venue in the past to make various announcements. I was struck by the fact that back in March of 2023, it was, I believe, March 15th, Aaron went on the Pat McAfee show, and when he was asked about his future, he made clear, he said, I told everybody my intention is to play for the New York Jets. And from that point forward, the intentions were set. That's where everything was headed. It ended up taking until 1 year ago Monday, the Monday of draft week, for the Jets to actually work out the trade with the Packers. But from that point forward, we knew where he was going. Fast forward to April 17th, 2025. And if I'm the Steelers listening, yeah, of course, they'd love to have a decision. They would love to have a decision 3-4 weeks ago after Rodgers visited, after Art Rooney said, hey, we're willing to wait a little while longer for him. But if I'm the Steelers hearing what Rodgers said yesterday, it's not so much that he doesn't have a decision. It's that nothing that Aaron Rodgers said indicated that there's any decision coming anytime soon. He's certainly earned a certain right to dictate things on his own terms and to take his time. You don't want anybody to commit if they're not going to be all in on this. But, April 18th, even for a guy who came up under Brett Favre, and for the final 6, 7, 8 years of Brett Favre's career, he took his sweet time in the offseason pondering things. But for Aaron to be sitting there talking about the potential of retirement, and not even when directly asked, are you going to play for the Steelers if you play, and saying, oh, I'm attached to nothing and open to everything, or whatever exactly the line was. If I'm the Steelers, I'm going, all right, we absolutely have to plan now as if this guy is not going to be there. And the next question then, Rich, becomes, at what point do the Steelers overtly or covertly send a very clear message to Aaron that, the train's leaving the station here?
Okay, because I definitely, Rodgers has a LeBron way about him, and by that I also mean fans always view what he's saying as performative. I honestly, watching what happened yesterday, I didn't feel that as performative at all. That he legitimately is now a 41-year-old guy looking at the Pacific Ocean with a lot of stuff going on and isn't ready to tell the Steelers one thing or another, and willing to risk no longer playing football with a team that has a playoff chance, let alone maybe a Super Bowl chance. And that's what I got. And that if the Steelers go through the draft and still need him, then they haven't lost his number to the point where he's going to let him know that I'm ready. And that's the same thing with anybody that might need a quarterback in the future. So my question for you would be, because I take a look at the free agents that are still around. I mean, that pool is pretty much dried. What about Kirk Cousins? How does this loom on all of this right now, Tom?
Kirk Cousins' situation continues to loom. The next real checkpoint on that is going to be the draft. I would not anticipate that Kirk Cousins would waive his no-trade clause to go anywhere until at least Friday, probably Saturday of draft week, just to avoid a similar situation to what he had a year ago. But I would tell you, Rich, from talking to a number of different people, I don't get the sense that the Falcons are displaying any level of urgency about making a move. They're not, intentionally, deliberately making any types of calls, trying to shop Kirk Cousins. They're not pushing forward and saying, hey, you know what, we will eat a lot of the money here. To this point, they've wanted a new team to pick up a good chunk of that $27.5 million that Cousins is fully guaranteed this season, on top of the $10 million guarantee in 2026 that's subject to offsets, and give up a mid-round pick. And again, it's not even as if they're like shopping this and trying to bring it to a head. There's still time. They could do that next week. That's when a lot of the trade calls take place. But from the moment that the Browns signed Joe Flacco, and we talked about this when I was out there with the boys last week hosting the show, the Browns signing Flacco was also an indication that they don't see any urgency that the Falcons are actually going to trade Kirk Cousins. If that changes, if that evolves, if the Falcons are willing to be, for lack of a better term, more reasonable in terms of what they're asking for Cousins, the Steelers would be a logical spot. But there also still is that looming possibility of the Steelers either drafting somebody in round one, or just saying we're going to roll with Mason Rudolph, maybe draft somebody later in the draft, and then see if Aaron's still hanging around come summer. It's a very unusual type of a situation. They are at number 21, where depending how some things fall up at the top of the draft, there's certainly going to be one quarterback on, because Cam Ward remains the presumptive number one overall pick. But Jackson Dart, we'll see if he's off the board. Is Shedeur Sanders, who just took a visit to Pittsburgh, was pretty effusive about what he felt about that organization. Mike Tomlin, is he still on the board? Where does Jalen Milroe fit in all this? Where does Tyler Shuck fit in all this? You got 5 quarterbacks, one who's definitely going to go, and 4 that could go, could not. There's a lot of different moving parts here, but the one that doesn't appear to be moving is the guy that close to a month ago now, when he snuck into the Steelers headquarters driving a Honda rental car, it seemed like that was coming to a point where he was going to make a decision. And it's now apparent that Rodgers, he's going to make a decision at some point in time, but he doesn't sound like he's anywhere close.
Well, I remember it was the Cleveland draft where it broke right before the round, the first round. Hey, Rodgers is not happy, and this is a marriage that's breaking up in Green Bay, and we all know, here we are now in 2025 it's kind of a Mad Lib conversation. It's a little bit different, obviously, in terms of the breakup, although that was part of his conversation with McAfee yesterday. Before we move on to the draft itself, Tom, what's your reporting on what did happen with Rodgers and the Jets that Rodgers gave a ton of answers to? And I don't know if the Jets are going to respond in any way, shape, or form. Maybe they will by talking to people like you on background, whatever you're willing to share. What did happen? Did that really happen where they gave him 20 seconds of time after having him fly all the way out to New Jersey to tell him what they could have told him over the phone?
What I was told at the time was that Aaron had indicated to them, hey, I'm going to be on that side of the country in this week. And they said, great, come into the building. And there had been ongoing dialogue up until that about, just a variety of different things, because they don't, as Aaron said yesterday, Aaron Glenn and him really don't know each other. Aaron clearly, from his perspective, went in there thinking we're going to have a conversation about the future. The Jets very quickly informed him they were going another direction. He did not, and he affirmed that yesterday, he wasn't begging to stay or some of the things that have been reported. It was more so he thought, that the door was going to be open. I would say this, Rich. Part of what Rodgers pushed back at yesterday, and what he said Aaron Glenn said to him was, well, you're sitting in the back of the room and guys are looking at you when I'm talking. And Aaron is on a national TV show talking about a private conversation. That kind of is evidence of part of why the Jets just didn't think this was going to be a workable situation. They wanted to start fresh in this entire thing. You talk about what broke before, I think it was the 2021 draft, and that followed reporting by me and others earlier in the week that the 49ers had heard that Aaron Rodgers was not happy, and they called the Packers about whether or not Rodgers was available. And that's Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur, 2 guys who know each other for a long time. And Matt basically told him, like, Kyle, get out of here, and hung up on him. Like, no, we're not going to do that. But there were a variety of different connections of why Kyle would have known that maybe Aaron was not thrilled there. The 49ers end up going and drafting Brock Purdy a couple of days later with the final pick, and that's worked out pretty well for them. Aaron ends up signing a new deal with the Packers. He comes back and he plays a couple more years. But really, Rich, from that moment forward, we have not seen a whole lot of MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers. His last year in Green Bay was not good. 2023 was a mess, 4 snaps in the Achilles. And then last year, there were flashes down the stretch. He was clearly getting healthier, but we haven't seen the guy playing at that level. And now, again, if you're the Steelers and you're one of the blue blood organizations in the league, and as Cam Hayward said recently, there's no sales pitch. You want to be a Steeler or you don't. To hear Aaron not even committing to the idea that if he plays, he would want to play in Pittsburgh, I would say there's going to be some very interesting conversations over the next several days here about everything regarding the quarterback position in Pittsburgh. Because, listen, this is what you sign up for if you have Aaron Rodgers in. And I don't know if he would do weekly appearances with Pat McAfee, if he'd be on there talking constantly, but there is an air of it's Aaron Rodgers and the rest of the team. And as much as Aaron, because he watched Brett Favre at the end of his career, and he never wanted to become that because Brett at that time, dressed in a side locker room. He went to the podium every Wednesday. He was older and he's at a different stage of his life, just like Rodgers is now. And Aaron always made the point of, I'm going to dress at my locker. I'm going to speak to reporters at my locker like everybody else. You get to a certain age, Rodgers said it himself, I'm in a different phase in my life. This is all going to be part of the deal. And as offseason workouts get set to go next week, I know they don't usually have super high attendance in Pittsburgh, but this is still a symbolic point, not to mention the fact that a few days later, they are potentially going to be on the clock at number 21 with multiple quarterbacks that they're interested in there. If Aaron Rodgers' goal at age 41 is to wash the taste of a couple of bad years out of his mouth and go and try to take one more shot at winning big, and then they were to take a quarterback, you would say that's something that may help the Steelers in years 26, 27, 28. But if the goal for Rodgers is to try to win a championship right now, anything that he does that would yield them not adding somebody who can help them win in 2025, you would think would be counterproductive to the ultimate goal, which right now, dear Rodgers tell it, is taking a back seat to things that he's thinking about and things he's dealing with in his personal life. And we'll see if and when football becomes part of that plan.
Tom Pelissero here on the Good Friday and the weekend before the draft right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, so let's jump into the draft and what we can glean right here, because the rest of us don't have your Rolodex, and we're looking at things for try and get some hints, whether it's Cam Ward playing Twitch or the list of people who are appearing in Green Bay. And Jackson Dart no longer going to Green Bay. Is there a question as to who the third quarterback in this draft is going to be? The third drafted quarterback in this draft is going to be? Tom?
I would say, Rich, there are questions who the second, third, fourth, and fifth drafted quarterbacks are going to be. All indications within the league. And I've talked to a ton of people. My annual quarterback story will be coming out. It'll publish next week before I'm joining you guys in studio in Green Bay. I know you always love to dive into some of the quotes.
Yes, sir.
But I would say this, Cam Ward, as much as you can quibble about, okay, where would he have ranked in last year's quarterback class? And a lot of people I talked to would put him somewhere between 4th around Michael Penix and 6th at Bo Nix, maybe even a little lower. There's some people who believe he'd be up in that top group. But he's a bona fide, projects on paper as a bona fide starter. Everybody else, there are real questions here, and not to give away the story, Rich, but between Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and Tyler Shuck, from team to team, there is not a strong consensus on the order that those 4 guys would be stacked on boards, the order that they will go, whether any of them even are going to be really good starters in the league, and therefore whether or not they'll even go in the first round. That's the level of variance that you have in this draft. And zooming out for a second to the macro here, Rich, a lot of times when I try to figure out who the locks are, who the virtual locks are, and then those guys who are on the board. Usually you have 18 to 22 players in a given draft who from team to team are going to have first round grades. And those are guys that, barring something unforeseen, they're going to go in the first. This year, when you talk to teams, there might be 8 guys, there might be 10 guys, and then you've got this massive clump of dudes. And I know that, George Payton made a reference with the Broncos yesterday about like, hey, the player we get at 10 and 20 are going to be pretty similar. I've heard it. The guy might be 8 to 25 or similar. The guy from 10 to 40 are going to be very similar. There is no consensus. It's going to be somewhat need-based, but also about the flavors, who you like. your comfort level with medical and character issues.
Is that
and
why, just to jump in, is that why we haven't seen any trades involved in the first round?
That's a big part of it, because the teams that are in, depending where you have it, the elite group, it's like 4 or 5 guys. Cam Ward, based on his position, is in that group. Clearly, Travis Hunter is in there. Abdul Carter, depending how you feel on Mason Graham, Tyler Warren, but that's a pretty small group. Then you got that next chunk of 5, 6, 7 players. Those teams are not going to want to trade down and get out of the, let's call them the blue chip or the blue minus type players and go down to a lesser caliber of players. The teams that might want to go up are in a spot where it's like, we're going to have to give up so much to get in there. We can just sit where we are and kind of see how the board falls and then make decisions within the draft. You may well get a lot of maneuvering once the draft begins. And I've certainly talked to GMs over the past several days who are all trying to figure out who's still going to be there, where the runs are going to be at certain positions. But this is going to be a read and react type of draft. And when it comes to the quarterbacks here, there are people who like Shedeur Sanders. There's certainly a lot to unpack just because his story is so unique. He's only played for his dad going back to high school. How are the dynamics going to work with that? Can he play the style that he's played at Colorado in the NFL? With Jackson Dart, he's got some big fans. He's also got people who just don't see it, and they don't trust quarterbacks, even though Lane Kiffin's incorporated more of the West Coast principles. So much of that stuff, it's the same offense that produced like Matt Corral. Lane Kiffin does a really good job not putting a ton on the quarterback's shoulders. And so what's your vision and projection for Jackson Dart? Jalen Milroe is such a dynamic runner, but also wants to be able to play like a pocket quarterback. And so how do you get him on board? What's the vision for him? What's that scheme going to look like? He could go all the way up to the middle of the first, Rich. He could go somewhere toward the middle to bottom of the second round. I tend to believe he goes sooner than later just because the run ability is so dynamic, but there's unknowns with him. And then Tyler Shuck is the one that I think, the average flipping around football fan is not as familiar with because he hasn't played. He's 7 years in college. Yeah. He backed up Justin Herbert for 2 years at Oregon. That's how long the guy has been in college football. And until last year, Rich, he had never played more than 7 games in a single season. He'd had a broken collarbone and a shoulder and a broken leg, and then finally puts it together last year at Louisville. Well, as he's gone through the process and has met with teams and teams have dug into that tape at Louisville, it's pro-style offense, and Jeff Brom puts a lot on his plate and trusts him at the line of scrimmage. What you have to get used to there is he's going to turn 26 this fall. He's an older player. He's got a medical history. There are some things the coaches say you pick up on tape where maybe, that injury history, maybe he's, pulling away from certain things, but he looks like what you expect a quarterback to look like. I had him on my potential first round surprise list that I published on NFL.com yesterday. I think there's a real possibility that guy could get pushed up. After that, you draw a pretty clear line. But I'm telling you, Rich, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of the quarterbacks from team to team. And I haven't talked to all 32, but I've talked to a lot of them. They're in a different order on every board. They're in a different order for people in the same building, just because those 4 guys are so different in terms of their skill set. That's going to be part of the intrigue as we roll through not just round 1 on Thursday night, but really as we get into day 2 as well.
All right, before I send you on your Easter weekend, and then we'll see each other in Wisconsin next Wednesday is when you're appearing on our program. I did a top 5 list of the things I want to see happen at the NFL draft, but likely won't. I want to quickly run through them with you, and you tell me if I'm even sniffing on the right trail. Okay. Number 5, the commissioner gets cheered. That's number 5.
No chance.
Okay. All right.
Green Bay has no axe to grind, but
that's what I said.
It's a thing now. It's the zeitgeist.
And the draft is there. Whoever thought it would come there? He put it there. So, all right.
Mark Murphy and the Packers would probably argue, hey, we built a multi-million-dollar development here at Titletown to get this event here.
Number 4.
Roger will get booed, and he likes it.
Okay. Number 4, a non-QB needy team drafts one.
I think that there are teams that are lurking potentially in the quarterback market that don't have an overt need. A team like the Rams, there's definitely other teams keeping an eye on what the Rams are going to do. They've been going year to year with Matthew Stafford. They've had to redo his contract a couple times.
Okay.
They don't have necessarily a frontline need. Stafford's going to be the starter there this year, but at 26, the guy you like is your quarterback of the future. Yes, I think there's certainly a possibility.
Okay. Number 3, the mock drafts are totally wrong. Totally.
The mock drafts are not totally wrong, but they are going to be less predictable because there are so many players that are all pretty similar in terms of how they're graded. Mm-hmm. There could be more need, or we could see some off the books types of names. The center from Georgia, Jared Wilson, being one. Carson Schlesinger, who hasn't been in any mock drafts, could go in the first. I think that up at the top, it'll be pretty accurate. But as we get from 10 and beyond, there's going to be a lot of who do you like.
Number 2, a major star player gets traded.
Depends how you define major star. I mean, Jalen Ramsey's been to 7 Pro Bowls. He's a pretty good player. That's a situation that's been evolving for months.
Ayuk?
There's certainly a possibility he could get traded. There are a few wide receivers with
Ayuk.
Unresolved situations. Trey Hendrickson, too.
Okay.
That's still been back and forth, though.
Okay.
Yes, I'd say there's a pretty decent chance that one or more of those players, maybe even somebody we're not thinking about, end up getting dealt during the draft.
Yeah, and Cousins is obviously one we discussed as well. Mm-hmm. And then last one, Jerry Jones trades up for Travis Hunter. Let's go.
I mean,
let's go.
Jerry better not just back up the Brinks truck, but like somehow pull the yacht onto Lake Erie for Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam if he's going to pull off a trade to get to number 2. When you got Andrew Berry out there yesterday comparing Travis Hunter to Shohei Ohtani, that should be a pretty clear indication that Cleveland, barring the unforeseen, is not going to let that guy go by.
We were joking that if this happened, the league would literally stop the clock to give all of us 5 extra minutes to talk about it. They give the Giants 15 minutes like it's back in Radio City to make their 3rd overall selection if that happens.
We all know Jerry's got his favorites in every draft. They might be just the uber stars that he thinks of, with guys gone past. It could be, University of Texas guys like Quinn Ewers. What would he do? Where might he take Quinn Ewers? Jerry's always got a lot of things in his mind, but the odds seem to be plummeting right now that we're not going to see Travis Hunter playing both ways in a Browns uniform sooner than later.
Tom, we will see you in Wisconsin, brother. You be well.
Can't wait. See you, fellas.
Practically a home game for this guy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Tom Pelissero, one of the rare situations on NFL Network to take a direct flight to Green Bay to cover the draft.
Are you sure about that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm connecting through his town.
Yeah, me too. Same.
This just in. Can confirm it is direct from where I'm going initially. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.